What happened to Alexander the Great's lost tomb? Imagine discovering the grave of one of the most famous people who ever lived. Not a king remembered only by historians, not a forgotten ruler buried beneath ancient ruins, but Alexander the Great, a man who conquered much of the known world before reaching the age of 33. A man whose victories changed history forever, and yet, despite centuries of searching, nobody knows where his tomb is. For more than 2,000 years, emperors, explorers, archaeologists, and treasure hunters have tried to find it. Some believed it was hidden beneath a modern city. Others thought it had been destroyed long ago. A few claim it may still be waiting beneath the sands of Egypt. So what really happened to the tomb of Alexander the Great? To answer that question, we must begin with the final days of his life. In the year 323 BC, Alexander stood at the height of his power. His empire stretched from Greece to Egypt and deep into Asia. No army had ever marched so far. No ruler had ever conquered so much territory in such a short time. Yet in Babylon, something unexpected happened. Alexander became ill. Ancient sources describe days of fever and weakness. Some believed he was poisoned. Others thought disease was responsible. The truth remains uncertain. After several days, the young conqueror died. He was only 32 years old. His sudden death shocked the ancient world. But another question immediately emerged. Who would inherit the empire? And perhaps even more importantly, what would happen to Alexander's body? For his followers, this was no ordinary burial. This was the body of a man many considered almost divine. Alexander's generals understood the importance of his remains. His body became a political symbol. Possessing it meant possessing legitimacy. Ancient writers describe an extraordinary funeral carriage built to transport him, covered in gold, decorated with precious stones, pulled by teams of powerful animals. It was less a coffin and more a moving monument. Originally, Alexander was supposed to be buried in Macedonia, the homeland of his family. But that never happened. One of his former generals, Ptolemy, intercepted the funeral procession. Instead of allowing the body to return to Greece, he brought it south to Egypt. This decision would change the story forever. Ptolemy eventually became ruler of Egypt. To strengthen his authority, he associated himself closely with Alexander. The conqueror's body was first placed in Memphis. Later, it was transferred to Alexandria. At the time, Alexandria was one of the greatest cities on earth. A center of knowledge, a center of trade, a city filled with magnificent buildings and monuments. Somewhere within this city stood Alexander's tomb. Ancient visitors described it as a place of enormous importance. Pilgrims traveled great distances to see it. Rulers visited it as a sign of respect. For centuries, the tomb was not lost at all. People knew exactly where it was, and many famous individuals stood before it. One of the most famous visitors was Julius Caesar. Although details are limited, ancient accounts suggest he visited Alexandria while the tomb was still known. Later came Augustus, the first Roman emperor. According to ancient writers, Augustus personally viewed Alexander's body. One story claims he accidentally damaged the conqueror's nose while paying his respects. Whether true or not, the tale shows something remarkable. More than 300 years after his death, Alexander's remains were still visible. Other Roman emperors followed. Some left gifts. Some removed objects from the tomb as souvenirs. The site remained one of the most famous monuments in the ancient world. Yet eventually, references to it began to disappear. And that is where the mystery truly begins. By the 4th century AD, Alexandria was changing. Political instability affected the Roman world. Religious transformations swept across the empire. Earthquakes damaged parts of the city. Wars and civil conflicts left their mark. Gradually, mentions of Alexander's tomb became less frequent. Then they stopped almost entirely. The most famous grave in the world had seemingly vanished. Nobody recorded its destruction. Nobody clearly explained what happened. The trail simply went cold. For historians, this silence is one of the greatest mysteries in archaeology. How could a monument visited by emperors disappear without a trace? Over the centuries, countless theories emerged. Some scholars believe the tomb still lies beneath modern Alexandria. This theory is attractive because much of the ancient city now rests beneath later construction. Buildings, roads, and entire neighborhoods cover areas that archaeologists cannot easily excavate. Others believe earthquakes may have buried or destroyed the structure. Parts of ancient Alexandria sank beneath the Mediterranean Sea after seismic events. If the tomb stood near those areas, its remains could now be underwater. Another theory suggests that the tomb was dismantled and reused. Throughout history, stones from ancient monuments were often incorporated into newer buildings. If this occurred, traces of the tomb may be scattered throughout the city. Yet despite numerous excavations, no definitive evidence has ever appeared. Every few years, headlines appear announcing a possible breakthrough. A newly discovered chamber, an unusual burial site, a forgotten structure beneath the city. Many have claimed to have found Alexander. None have succeeded. One of the most famous examples occurred in the late 20th century, when researchers proposed several possible locations. Each generated excitement. Each ultimately failed to provide convincing proof. The problem is simple. To identify Alexander's tomb, archaeologists need undeniable evidence, an inscription, historical records, human remains linked directly to the conqueror. Without such evidence, speculation remains speculation. Finding the tomb would be one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in modern history. Not merely because of treasure, not because of gold, but because Alexander changed the ancient world. His campaigns connected distant cultures. His city spread Greek influence across continents. His legacy survived long after his empire collapsed. A confirmed tomb could reveal details about his death, burial, and the people who followed him. It might answer questions historians have debated for centuries, and perhaps uncover entirely new mysteries. To understand why Alexander's tomb remains missing, we need to look at Alexandria itself. Modern visitors often imagine archaeologists searching through untouched ruins in the desert. The reality is far more complicated. Ancient Alexandria and modern Alexandria occupy much of the same ground. For more than 2,000 years, people have continued to build, rebuild, and expand the city. Homes were replaced by larger homes. Temples gave way to churches. Churches gave way to mosques. Old foundations disappeared beneath newer streets. Entire layers of history became buried beneath generations of construction. This means that some of the most important archaeological sites may lie beneath apartment buildings, busy roads, schools, and marketplaces. Even if researchers knew the exact neighborhood where Alexander was buried, excavating it would be enormously difficult. In some cases, impossible. And there is another problem. Ancient Alexandria was repeatedly struck by earthquakes. Several major seismic events damaged the city over the centuries. Some districts collapsed, other areas gradually sank. Today, divers exploring the harbor have discovered statues, columns, and ruins resting on the seabed. Pieces of the ancient city now lie underwater. If Alexander's tomb once stood near the coast, it may no longer be on land at all. It could be hidden beneath layers of mud and stone at the bottom of the Mediterranean. One of the most frustrating aspects of the mystery is that nobody can say with certainty what the tomb looked like. Ancient writers mentioned it. Several important visitors described seeing Alexander's body, yet detailed descriptions are surprisingly rare. Historians believe the burial complex may have been known as the Soma, a name associated with Alexander's mausoleum. Some scholars imagine a grand marble structure surrounded by courtyards and monuments. Others picture something closer to an Egyptian royal tomb, adapted for a Macedonian king. What seems certain is that the site was impressive. It attracted emperors, it attracted pilgrims, it attracted visitors from across the Mediterranean. This was not a forgotten grave, hidden in a remote valley. For centuries, it stood among the most famous landmarks of the ancient world, which makes its disappearance even more difficult to explain. Imagine if the location of the Eiffel Tower was somehow forgotten 1,000 years from now. That is roughly the scale of the mystery historians face. Ironically, Alexander's fame may be one reason his tomb vanished. Because it was so important, countless people visited it. Many rulers wanted to associate themselves with his legacy. Some left gifts, others removed objects. Ancient sources even suggest that certain emperors treated the tomb almost like a personal museum. Over centuries, repeated visits may have altered the site. Political struggles could have damaged it. Looters may have targeted it. Religious changes may also have played a role. As new beliefs spread throughout the Roman world, many ancient shrines and monuments lost their original significance. Structures once considered sacred were abandoned, dismantled, or repurposed. Alexander's tomb may have suffered the same fate. Not destroyed in a single dramatic event, but slowly forgotten, stone by stone, generation by generation, until nobody remembered exactly where it stood. Now imagine for a moment that the tomb is found tomorrow. What would archaeologists hope to discover? First, they would search for inscriptions, ancient names carved into stone, royal symbols, references linking the site directly to Alexander. Second, they would examine the architecture. The design alone could reveal whether the tomb blended Greek, Macedonian, and Egyptian traditions. Third, they would search for human remains. Modern scientific techniques can reveal astonishing details from ancient bones, age, health, injuries, diet, even clues about where a person spent parts of their life. For historians, such a discovery would be priceless, not because it would answer every question, but because it would provide evidence instead of speculation. For over 2,000 years, Alexander's final resting place has existed somewhere between history and legend. A confirmed tomb could finally bring the story back into the realm of fact. The most widely accepted theory is also the simplest. Alexander is still in Alexandria, somewhere beneath the modern city. Many historians favor this explanation because ancient sources repeatedly place his tomb there. For hundreds of years, visitors traveled to Alexandria specifically to see it. There is no reliable ancient account describing the body being moved elsewhere. If the tomb remained in the city and was gradually buried by centuries of construction, its disappearance becomes much easier to understand. The challenge is that modern Alexandria is home to millions of people. Large sections of the ancient city lie beneath buildings that cannot simply be removed. Archaeologists are often forced to work in small areas whenever construction projects expose older layers. Every excavation raises new hopes. Every excavation raises the same question: could this finally be the place? So far, the answer has always been no. Yet many researchers believe the tomb may be closer than anyone realizes, perhaps hidden beneath a neighborhood that thousands of people walk through every day, unaware of what lies below. Among all the possible locations, one area attracts particular attention: the ancient royal quarter. This district was once the political and ceremonial heart of Alexandria. Palaces stood here, government buildings stood here, important monuments stood here. Ancient writers connected Alexander's mausoleum with this prestigious part of the city. Unfortunately, much of the royal quarter has either disappeared beneath modern development or sunk beneath the sea. That creates a frustrating situation. The location most likely to contain the tomb is also one of the hardest places to investigate. Marine archaeologists have spent decades studying submerged ruins off Alexandria's coast. They have recovered statues, columns, and architectural fragments from the harbor. Each discovery reveals a little more about the lost city, but none have provided definitive proof of Alexander's burial place. At least not yet. Some researchers believe the answer may literally be underwater. Alexandria has suffered multiple earthquakes throughout its history. Combined with rising sea levels and shifting coastlines, these events dramatically altered parts of the ancient city. Entire sections collapsed into the Mediterranean. Today, divers can explore streets, monuments, and structures that once stood above sea level. The underwater ruins are remarkable. Massive stone blocks, broken statues, fragments of temples, all resting in silence beneath the waves. If Alexander's tomb stood near one of these vulnerable coastal areas, it is possible that nature itself hid the evidence. In that case, the world's most famous missing grave might not be buried beneath the city. It might be buried beneath the sea, waiting for technology advanced enough to find it. Ancient accounts contain another fascinating detail. Several writers suggested that Alexander's body was displayed inside a transparent coffin. Some sources describe gold, others refer to glass-like materials. Regardless of the exact construction, visitors reportedly viewed the conqueror's remains directly. This was highly unusual. Most rulers were hidden away within sealed tombs. Alexander was different. His body became part of the monument itself. People came not only to visit his grave, they came to see him. Imagine standing in Alexandria nearly 2,000 years ago, entering a magnificent mausoleum, and finding yourself face to face with the preserved body of Alexander the Great. It is no wonder the tomb became one of the most famous destinations in the ancient world. Yet this detail creates another mystery. If the body was publicly displayed for centuries, where did it eventually go? If the tomb was destroyed, what happened to the remains? Were they moved, hidden, lost? No ancient source gives a clear answer. The search for Alexander did not end in antiquity. It continued into the modern era. When Napoleon invaded Egypt in 1798, he brought scholars, engineers, and scientists with him. Their mission extended beyond warfare. They wanted to study the ancient world. Egypt captivated Europe. Every monument seemed to promise hidden secrets. Although Napoleon never found Alexander's tomb, the expedition helped ignite a renewed fascination with ancient history. Suddenly, researchers across Europe began asking old questions again. Where was Alexander buried? Could his tomb still survive? And if so, who would find it first? The hunt entered a new age, one driven by archaeology rather than legend. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, countless researchers proposed solutions. Some identified forgotten ruins. Others interpreted ancient texts in new ways. A few became convinced they had narrowed the search to a specific building or neighborhood. Excitement often followed. Newspaper headlines appeared. Public interest surged. Then the evidence failed to hold up. Again and again, promising leads ended in disappointment. Yet each failure also produced new information. Maps improved. Ancient records were re-examined. The layout of Alexandria became better understood. Little by little, historians assembled a clearer picture of the city Alexander once knew. The tomb remained hidden, but the search itself continued to advance. There is one possibility that many people dislike, because it means the mystery may never be solved. What if the tomb no longer exists? Over thousands of years, monuments can disappear completely. Earthquakes destroy them. Floods damage them. Invaders dismantle them. Builders recycle their stones. In some cases, even famous structures vanish almost without trace. Perhaps Alexander's mausoleum suffered the same fate. Perhaps all that remains are scattered fragments mixed among countless other ruins. If this theory is correct, archaeologists may never discover a dramatic hidden chamber filled with treasures. The evidence could already be broken apart and dispersed. Yet many historians remain optimistic. The tomb was too famous, too important, too well known. Something significant may still survive. Somewhere. Most archaeological mysteries eventually fade from public attention. Alexander's tomb is different because the man himself remains unforgettable. More than 2,000 years after his death, books continue to be written about him. Movies continue to be made about him. Military leaders continue to study his campaigns. Historians continue to debate his legacy. Few figures from the ancient world possess that kind of influence. Finding his tomb would be comparable to discovering an entirely new chapter of history. That possibility keeps researchers searching. It keeps governments funding excavations. And it keeps the public fascinated. Every generation hopes it will be the one that finally solves the mystery. Every generation inherits the same unanswered question: where is Alexander the Great? Alexander conquered an empire that stretched across continents. He defeated kings, crossed deserts, and reshaped the ancient world. Yet the greatest mystery connected to his name emerged only after his death. For centuries, people knew exactly where he rested. Roman emperors visited his tomb. Travelers crossed vast distances to see it. Then somehow, one of the most famous monuments on earth disappeared. Perhaps it lies beneath the crowded streets of Alexandria. Perhaps it rests beneath the Mediterranean Sea. Perhaps archaeologists are only meters away from the answer. Or perhaps the final traces of the tomb have already been lost to history. For now, nobody knows. And that uncertainty is precisely what makes the story so compelling. Because somewhere between legend and history, between the ancient world and the modern one, the final resting place of Alexander the Great remains hidden, waiting, silent, undiscovered. One of the greatest mysteries the ancient world has ever left behind.